Alright, welcome to the Strange North channel. In this video I'm going to cover the areas of Saskatoon that have a bit of a sketchy reputation. Every city in the world has areas that are a bit more rough, and Saskatoon is no exception. Last year I did a similar video for my hometown of Edmonton, Alberta. It seemed like most people found that video to be useful, and off the bat I have to say that I absolutely love Saskatoon. It's a beautiful city overall, and if you get the chance I definitely recommend checking it out. At the same time, overall crime numbers in Saskatoon are typically significantly higher than the national average. Over the summer, the Saskatoon police put out a press release where they talked about the Stats Canada Crime Severity Index rankings for 2023, and Saskatoon had the 8th highest crime numbers across the country. Now, people in Saskatoon often say that the west side is sketchier than the east side. And of course, that's a broad generalization. Most of the areas that most people consider to be sketchy in the city are on the west side of the river. But if you're visiting Saskatoon, you'll probably end up spending most of your time on the west side. This is where downtown, City Park, River Landing, and Riversdale, as well as 33rd Street are. When people talk about the west side being sketchy, they're typically referring to the Alphabets. This is an area directly west of downtown, and it's a series of lettered avenues going from Avenue A to Avenue Y. There is no Avenue Z. And honestly, in my experience, the southern portion of those lettered avenues can be a bit rough. Someone compiled the crime numbers for all of the neighborhoods in Saskatoon and put them on a graph. And the area that has by far the highest crime numbers, both for violent and non-violent crimes, is Confederation Suburban Center. This is mostly a commercial area, largely centered around Confederation Mall. This isn't a very popular area of the city in terms of tourism. Confederation Mall kind of sucks. I'm sure most people in the city would agree. Although besides the mall, this area does have a lot of stores. So this would be a decent area to visit if you're shopping for everyday goods. But there are definitely much more vibrant and walkable neighborhoods in the city. And in terms of overall crime numbers, this area ranks as the highest by a long shot. And then downtown does have fairly high crime rates compared to the other neighborhoods, but this is typical in most cities across North America. And of course, this is a densely populated area, so crime numbers are going to be a bit higher. Now honestly, in my opinion, downtown Saskatoon is not as sketchy as other areas of the city. If you're visiting Saskatoon, this is an area that you definitely have to check out. Most urban centers across the continent have seen an increase in the amount of social disorder, but I wouldn't say that this is a big problem in downtown Saskatoon. Overall, this is a vibrant and interesting area of the city, but because of the population density, it ranks relatively high when you're looking at crime in different neighborhoods across the city. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Alphabet Avenues are traditionally seen as the sketchiest area of the city, and in my personal experience, that's definitely true. In particular, there are a couple neighborhoods in this area that can be a bit rough. First off, you've got Pleasant Hill, and the areas along 20th Street as well as around St. Paul's Hospital can definitely be a bit dodgy. And of course, this is typical of inner cities, and this is not an extreme problem in Saskatoon. But the area of Pleasant Hill generally has a bit of a rough reputation, and I think for good reason. And then also in the Alphabets area directly beside Pleasant Hill is the neighborhood of Riversdale. This neighborhood can definitely be a bit rough, but it's also one of my favorite areas of the city. In fact, I mentioned it as one of the places to visit in my Saskatoon Top 10 video. And although it can be a bit dodgy, this is also one of the most popular neighborhoods in the city. Riversdale has had a bit of a reputation for quite a while, and it's experienced fairly rapid gentrification over the past 10 years or so. The main commercial area of Riversdale is in the eastern portion of the neighborhood, and then it gets a lot more dodgy as you move west into the neighborhood. A resident of Saskatoon posted a popular video last year where they walked through this area and talked about its negative reputation. And that's definitely valid, but I think that this person could have been a lot more balanced in that video and explained that the neighborhood of Riversdale also has many excellent features. But yes, Riversdale can definitely be a bit dodgy, particularly as you move west into the neighborhood. A lot of this activity is centered along 20th Street, and then 22nd Street to the north can also be a bit rough at times. Another neighborhood that has fairly high violent and non-violent crime rates is Kelsey-Woodlawn. This is in the north central portion of the city. This is mostly an industrial and commercial area, mixed in with some lower income residential. Many people I've talked to have mentioned this area. You probably won't find yourself up in Kelsey-Woodlawn unless you're visiting a specific business. And so as you can see, the neighborhoods that have by far the highest crime rates are all located on the west side of the river. And this is why the west side is generally seen as a bit sketchier than the east side. But I'll say it again, the west side also has most of the popular areas of the city. And so you definitely don't want to avoid the west side in general. But there are some areas that have a bit of a reputation. And then besides those areas, people have also mentioned a couple of other smaller areas in Saskatoon that can be a bit rough. A bunch of people mentioned the area of Exhibition. This is in the southern portion of the city, and it's centered around the exhibition grounds. And many people also specifically mentioned the area around Stan's Place. I've never been here myself, but it definitely has a bit of a seedy reputation. And then finally, a bunch of people also mentioned the area of Sutherland. This is in the northeast portion of the city, and it's definitely come up a few times when I've talked to people about sketchy areas of Saskatoon. And not the entire neighborhood, but in particular the area around the main commercial street of Central Avenue. And apparently there are some bars and restaurants that have a bit of a reputation. But many people have also said that the areas of Sutherland and Exhibition have gotten a lot better over time, and they're not nearly as sketchy as they used to be. But overall, I'm sure that most people in Saskatoon would agree that the southern portion of the Alphabet Avenues west of the downtown core is usually the sketchiest area of the city. And that's going to wrap this one up. I don't know Saskatoon as well as a local, but I visit the city quite often, and I've talked about this subject with many people that live here. And generally, I think that this is a reasonable overview of some of the rough areas of Saskatoon. And of course, most crimes are caused by people that are not involved in gangs, but gang activity definitely plays a part. And if you're interested in the subject, a number of months ago I posted a video on the gang situation in Saskatchewan, including many street gangs that are active in Saskatoon. I've also posted several videos on the many positive aspects of the city. I absolutely love Saskatoon and I visit quite often. I would definitely recommend visiting the city. I just wanted to point out a few areas that can be a bit rough for people that are new to the city or plan on visiting at some point in the future. I hope you found this one interesting and informative. I'd love to hear about your experiences and thoughts on the subject. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee, and there's a link to that in the description below. And if you haven't already, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I typically upload something new at least once a week. Thank you for watching, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.